Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, all right, well, good afternoon again, and I'll call the meeting to order. Please, roll call.
Yes. Heidi, Kelly, Sid Garrett here, Michael Cashman
Here.
Marty Mannix
Here.
Christina Ugo here, Michael Cashman
Here.
and Jim Coffey.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Anna.
Anna.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anna Lamb.
I'm here. Okay.
Yeah, we haven't heard from Taylor.
All right, so I will take a motion to approve today's agenda.
So move.
Sid, second. Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from our February 13th meeting. Anybody make a motion?
So moved.
Michael? Sid, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any public comment? Right, then we will move on to our presentation, which is on intercollegiate athletics with Mike Howard. Hi, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I served about 8 years on a school board, so I felt like I was back in the school board for approving the minutes here before we got going. But I think I'll stand for at least a little bit if that's okay with everyone. I'm not Todd Moravec. Yes, I'm Mike Howard. For those that don't know me, Director of Athletics and Recreation. Been here for the last, this is year 7. Time flies when you're having fun. And I gave a presentation, this same presentation recently at Rotary a couple of months ago, and Ken was there, President Yeti was there, maybe a few others were there. They must have thought it was somewhat worthwhile. So here I am today. So just going to talk a little bit about athletics and then answer questions. Shouldn't take too long. Ken, if you want to hit the next screen. This is a little bit about who we are. We have 18 intercollegiate teams. Year 2 into year 3 of my tenure, we added women's lacrosse. That was our last official addition as an intercollegiate sport. The department promotes a healthy and active lifestyle, which is obviously a critical component to our residential college setting, fostering leadership opportunities, character growth through sport and fitness. Yesterday we do one workshop each semester for our student athletes to participate in that we mandate. And then we do a bunch of workshops throughout the year that are not mandated. So yesterday was our first annual Cardinal Summit, which our new women's soccer coach, Whitney Ferrari, who came from St. Olaf College this past year, led that effort with a few of our other coaches. And it was an outstanding morning and afternoon of leadership. We had 4 sessions. One, Sarah Yando, who's our dietitian on campus, gave a session. Andrea Stamatis gave a presentation on sports psychology, mental health. Toby Hay from the Career Services Office gave a presentation. And then Bob Christopherson gave a presentation on just personal finance. So it was really great. And that plays into what I'm talking about here about athletics playing, kind of a critical role to the healthy lifestyle that students live. And then, again, fostering leadership opportunities and character for them as they move on. Ken, if you want to roll this, just to kind of show us a little bit about what sports we have for those that are unaware. Throughout the fall, I won't read through each season, but you can see that we've got a fairly comprehensive offering throughout the fall, the winter, and the spring seasons. Knock on wood, our weather cooperated this past week, so we were able to play baseball at home this past weekend. We hosted softball last week, and it's one of those first year that I can remember that we've been able to really get out and host our first weekend's game. So that was great. This is a little bit more about who we are as a department, because we're a lot more than intercollegiate athletics. We offer a lot of, Melissa Lemire is our director of rec sports. Matt Salvatore is our director of our fitness center. I work very closely with them throughout the course of the year to work on all of these things, and then obviously report up through Corey and through enrollment student success. But We offer a wide array of intramural sports, a growing wide array of sport clubs. As Corey can attest to, it seems like every day we have a different request. I think we have 7 or 8 different types of dance groups that we have interest in. We have some sport clubs that travel and play games. Our marksmanship club has done really, really well this year, competing against Division 1, 2, and 3 teams. We're fortunate because we got Peter Visconti right here in the community and on campus who helps work with that program. Our rugby teams, have gone to the national level. Our cheerleading team is getting active again, and they're trying to go to some of the national competitions. So it really is a wide array of opportunities. And then the fitness center and miscellaneous services that we offer. We have a bike rental program that students take advantage of a lot to, at this point, we have 15 bikes and they're pretty much gone the day we rent them. And students can rent them for a week and then they have to turn them back in and then let another student have an opportunity to use the bike. I'm going to talk a little bit later about our construction project that's going on in Memorial Hall. I think you're all aware of that project. It's a major uplift to that facility, and this provides some of the rationale for why that's so desperately needed. We had really outgrown the fitness center space. So the new fitness center will increase the square footage down there by almost 5,000 square feet. So it's going to provide a lot more opportunity for students to be able to go in and use the space. We'll also have a pretty massive group activity room and a multi-purpose room as well that will help service some of the overcrowding that we're seeing in the ACC and some of the other facilities where we're just bursting at the seams for students to have a place to recreate and express themselves. This next slide is kind of what is our impact? We try to strive for 3 things. We try to strive for competitive excellence, academic achievement, and community service, and try to balance those 3 things out throughout the year. We've had a lot of success, 9 national championships. A lot of those are women's ice hockey. This year we bowed out in the semifinals, but they had another fantastic year, winning the conference championship, similar to the men, winning the SUNY championship. And it's nice to see that program kind of rising back up to the top of the SUNY. And we finished the year ranked 7th nationally, which was fantastic on the men's side. And then the women finished the year ranked 3rd nationally. A lot of conference and team championships. And then we've had some individual national champions along the way as well. From an academic achievement, and some of you may be aware of this or know it, but some may not. Our students do really, really well academically. Last week we celebrated Division III week, and one of our highlight events is one that I actually brought with me from another campus. That still a good idea when you see it, but we host an event where each team invites one faculty member. The coach comes, and the coach and the faculty member and the student come, and we have a little reception for them and talk about how critical it is to balance out academics and athletics. And fortunately here at Plattsburgh, we have a tremendously supportive atmosphere, both in terms of the faculty, but also we have, Tom Thompson serves as our academic advisor. He's phenomenal. Michelle Carpentier's area with student success and retention efforts. We have a lot of collaborative support with coaches to make that all work. In spring of 22, we posted 3.16 semester GPA and a cumulative GPA of 3.26, which was above the non-student athlete GPA. I don't have these statistics in this slide presentation, but also from a retention standpoint and a graduation standpoint, student athletes, we tend to retain them longer, and they tend to graduate at higher levels. That's, not just here at Plattsburgh, but at other places as well, but we're very proud of that. And our coaches work incredibly hard. Many of them have study halls. Those that don't have study halls are still monitoring their student athlete progress throughout, every week of the year. Record tying 41 students were inducted into the Chi Alpha Sigma Honor Society, which is a national honor society which recognizes student athletes with a 3.40 or above. So again, our student athletes do really, really well in the classroom. This is just kind of just to kind of show a little bit of the impact in the community. I won't read through all of it, but generate 500 hours of radio, TV, webcasting coverage. We're fortunate here at Plattsburgh, and when we're recruiting new coaches, and then when we're recruiting student athletes, we talk a lot about the fact that we're a pretty high priority in the community. So when you read the Press Republican almost daily, there's a good section on Cardinal athletics. Wiry has been a partner of ours with local radio. And we have a lot of community partners with sponsorship and other events at all of our venues. So that's a big part of what makes it special here at Plattsburgh versus some of our competitors, where they're not the show in town, and they don't quite have the same kind of support. We have, as you can see, this was a rough statistic. Well, not a rough, it was an actual statistic from last year. We had 283,000 users visited our gocardinals.com website, spending a lot of time on that site and reading the stories and kind of following what we do. We had over 35,000 fans at over 130 contests. So it's a really nice way to bring the greater Plattsburgh community certainly together with our campus community to support the teams. We also do a ton of community service activities. It's my expectation that all of our teams are going to be engaged in the community as heavily as they can be. And if we're going to ask the community to give back to coming to the games and support us with sponsorship and fundraising initiatives, we need to do some things for the community as well. Plus, it goes back to that first slide talking about leadership and social development of our student athletes. So that's a small list of the events that we do throughout the course of the year, but our teams are heavily engaged in the community. And then kind of talk a little bit about the renovation projects. I know some of you, I think, have probably had a chance to walk into Memorial Hall. If you walk into the lobby, our hope is that the entire building is going to have that feel and look to it when it's all done, which the timeline right now is sometime next October or November. Certainly by the time we move into the spring semester next year, our goal is to be into our new spaces, have our coaches move back over there, have our new climbing wall, which is being installed this summer. Actually had a meeting last week with the company that's doing the gymnasium in the main gymnasium. And I'm told everything, knock on wood, is still on time schedule. So we're hoping to be able to open that up next spring semester fully for our students to really be able to get into the space and enjoy. I can tell you so far, the rec gym is an unbelievable hit. We hear occasionally, and hate to bring it up, but we do hear occasionally, but some folks that are upset that the pool is no longer here. I chime in with that as well. I ideally would have loved to have the pool. The problem was that the way the money was tied together, we couldn't expand the footprint of the building. The funding was only to keep the inside of the building, and the pool was at a point where it wasn't regulation. It didn't have a diving well. It needed more lanes. The only way to do it right would be to expand the footprint. We really could not do that. But I do tell folks that, on average, because we ran a lot of studies and a lot of numbers and a lot of surveys, and we had about 100 students a week that were using the pool. And not to diminish 100 students, but we have well over 1,000 that use the rec gym every week. So we're servicing a lot more students. So I know President Yeti and I think Ken went over to the new space that the Y is occupying up at the Wellness Center. And we're really hopeful that down the road, we can develop a real good partnership with them so that we can find a way to get our students there. And the Y has been accommodating, in their current location to servicing students that want to swim, because that's an important thing. But again, that's Memorial Hall. And then we also have, and there's another shot of the rec gym. We've created a lot of little hangout spaces, which this lobby is one of them, that students can just go sit, do their schoolwork and hang out. A secondary project that we had going on this fall, last summer into the fall, was renovation to the Fieldhouse gym. The indoor track was at a point where we were getting a lot of injuries. It was so hard to surface with our student athletes. We weren't really able to host any competitions. We could barely practice. And the facility itself, the lighting, the sound, everything was really just showing its age. So this project took over, and if you haven't been in there yet, some of you may have been in there for December commencement. You'll be in there probably in May, and you'll see it's a brighter space. It certainly is much more aesthetically pleasing. So it's we had hosted our first track meet in 18 years this year indoors, which was really a great thing for those student athletes. And that program is one that we're trying to expand to bring more numbers in for enrollment purposes. As you can imagine, some of our rosters, you can only have so many players on your basketball team. So some of our rosters are pretty tight in terms of being able to draw more students. Our cross-country and track and field programs can handle, they have greater capacity. So we're really we're hoping that this facility is going to help that effort. That program also attracts a lot of North Country athletes who want to stay close to home. So again, it's been real nice. This is kind of a shot of the finished product, which shows the track, everything else. It came out really nicely. And then the last part of that project that I don't have a slide yet because we're not finished with it yet is we are purchasing turf to cover the inside area. There's been some hiccups with the actual design of the turf. So Tyson's working on that, but there'll be turf on the inside so that our fall and spring teams, especially baseball, softball, both soccers, lacrosses, will be able to go in there in the winter months and practice their sport on a grass surface versus the hard rubber surface. So again, hoping that those two projects, we've already seen significant gains in our recruiting from them, and hoping that they have continued. Good luck with that. Any questions?
Christina.
Sure.
Is there any talk about renting out the turf space to local teams in order to have some generation of funds?
There is. That's a great question. We do rent our outdoor facilities now, and we rent the indoor track to the high schools, the local high schools and such, but we've had a lot of requests to rent the turf. So when it goes in, we will certainly be doing that as well. Yeah.
I just want to make a statement. Kudos to you and the entire team, but I was most impressed recently with student athletes being part of the FISU games. I know that you did the torch relay and not only just playing, but also actually running the torch. You know, our students are on that global stage, and just kudos to you for continuing to coach those kids.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was nice to get involved.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
All right. My door's always open. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, call.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Yep.
Hey, so you can see we switched up the agenda a little bit because the last couple of meetings, the Port Campus governance people left before we had a chance to hear from them. So we moved them on Michael's request. We'll do that from time to time. So Sandra, you're up first, I think.
Okay. I seem to always be reporting on the University Faculty Senate plenaries because they're always either about to happen or just happened. And in this case, it's about to happen. So this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I will be attending the SUNY University Faculty Senate plenary. It's being held in Syracuse at Upstate Medical Center, and We're very happy that the chancellor, the provost, and the president of the board of trustees will all be there in person for at least part of the meeting. Which we usually always have at least some interaction. Sometimes it's over Zoom, but this time they will all be there in person. And we did meet the new chancellor in January at our last plenary. He'd only been on the job for a couple weeks, so we went easy on him. This time, when we do the Q&A, we will be probably every group will be a bit more pointed in their questions. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that. I'm sure he will handle it well. He seems very, very good at speaking with groups, but still it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say, because he will also do a presentation to us in the Q&A. I just want to tell you some of the issues that are really percolating up through the Senate. I have a handful of resolutions that are coming up for a vote that I want to just tell you what they're about. The first one is resolution on best practices for administrative searches at the associate dean level and above. This talks about, it's already part of the Board of Trustees policies that for any searches for academic positions, for vice presidents and deans, anything of that level, though this resolution also includes associate deans, but it's already part of the Board of Trustees policy that there be consultation with faculty. This resolution just asks for some clarification on that, some clear public policies. They ask that every campus really make sure that their guidelines are clear as to how that consultation happens, as to the involvement of faculty and staff on those searches. And again, making sure it's public, making sure it's available on websites, all of that. The next resolution is calling for the title of the resolution to condemn abusive workplace behavior and request that the SUNY system administration establish a system-wide workplace conduct policy. So this resolution asks the chancellor to be sure or to lead the effort to foster an equitable, inclusive, and anti-bullying culture throughout the workplace in the SUNY system, and has quite a few suggestions on ways to improve that, including a SUNY Ombuds office to lead this charge, with lots of ideas on things that could be included in that. Also suggests that there be local ombuds offices on individual campuses or smaller campuses, potentially regional offices, and guidelines on panels, that campus review panels, to look at, review, and investigate reports of abusive workplace complaints. So again, it's a very comprehensive list of suggestions on how this could be handled. There are a couple of resolutions that were recently passed by the Faculty Council on Community Colleges that we are asking the University Faculty Senate to endorse. One of them was called Supporting Students and Faculty Faced with Rising Ideological and Anti-Intellectual Attacks on Academic Freedom. This refers specifically to states that have been passing laws regarding academic freedom, what can and can't be taught on campuses. And so it's really asking SUNY system to take the lead on, fighting against this sort of attacks on academic freedom. The next resolution from the Faculty Council on Community College, which again we're asking to endorse, has to do with the inclusive access bookstore programs. And this asks, so that this is something that's, and I know it's come up on our campus as well, that the idea that student fees are being charged directly for course materials. And so this is just urging some caution in really looking carefully at what that means. Things like the fact that if students don't want the book charges automatically on their fees, that a lot of these require students to opt out versus opting into paying those fees. Wanting to make sure that this goes through a governance process if a campus does include this, making sure that it's not undermining OER efforts, which is even better for students as far as cost. asking for some data on actual cost savings. So it's really just bringing up a lot of issues to make sure that campuses, when this is coming up to campuses, that it's, the campuses are really looking at it, have information about it. And the last thing that will be coming, well, at least of the ones we know about in advance, I know there's a number of resolutions becoming that haven't come through the executive committee yet, but we're updating the policy that we have on the University Faculty Senate campus consultation and visitation processes. This is something that has been in existence for a few decades. This allows campuses that are maybe having some issues with shared governance or conflict between faculty and staff and administration. There's a couple processes in place that bring in some members of the University Faculty Senate to come in and talk to people on both the faculty, staff, and the administration to hear the sides of what's going on, to issue a report to try to help resolve issues. There's different levels of it already. The most serious level, what we refer to as a visitation. This always involves an invitation from both the campus presidents and the leader of the campus governance body, and it includes a member of the visitation team from SUNY system. And that's when there's really serious issues going on. The consultation is less serious. So we're revising this, really kind of cleaning up some expectations of, who sees the reports, what happens to them, who has the right to distribute them, issues about whether people can make anonymous reports, keeping information confidential. We also added into this revision an informal process, which has been happening for a long time. It just was never actually in writing, to show that the University Faculty Senate can be called in, and the president or parliamentarian, various people, to come to a campus just also for educational reasons, to talk about what shared governance is, to help campuses if they're revising bylaws, if they're making decisions on moving from, say, a body of the whole to a Senate model, and also to consult on smaller issues that might be popping up, areas of concern. So this is a revision that we're also putting forward for a vote this weekend. So that's a lot of things that are going on, a lot of issues that are happening on various campuses. And that's sort of just a little overview of what we're looking at.
Any questions?
Yeah, Sandra, on our campus, when Faculty Senate has resolutions, ultimately they come to President Inietti to respond to them. So where do the resolutions go? University Senate.
It's always written into the resolution as to where they go, because there's a variety of different people can be directed to. Most commonly, it is directed to the chancellor, asking him to sometimes do something at SUNY system, sometimes asking him if he would direct campuses to do something. Occasionally, I would go to the provost if it's really very academically focused. Sometimes it's a resolution to campus governance leaders. So it's asking the senators and the campus governance leaders who are in attendance to bring something back to their own campuses to work on. So it varies as to where it goes. Most often directing to the chancellor in asking him to potentially do something. And yeah, to be clear, these are resolutions. None of these have passed. Even once they pass, it's still up to another body to potentially carry it out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm gonna say thank you. I just want to say thank you, Sandra, to you and Ray for sitting and speaking with the provost and I, and certainly bringing the topics of shared governance to the table and having discussions. It's been very, very helpful to have those conversations. So thanks. And thanks.
I look forward to, that's an ongoing conversation, obviously. So I look forward to continuing the next year.
Thank you. Okay, Carmen's not here, so Michelle, UUP news.
All right. Well, I think we all were hoping for a budget. I keep checking the news. No news at this point. It doesn't seem to be funding for SUNY that seems to be the sticking point. It seems to be other things. So we're still putting the pressure on. We still want to make sure we're being heard, but as with University of Faculty Senate, the UUP Delegate Assembly is meeting in Albany. So we weren't planning on doing any sort of budget rallying, but you never know, it might happen this weekend. It was interesting that you mentioned the bill about workplace, what was the bullying, which is interesting because UUP has also brought up a SUNY-wide civility policy. We were told specifically the word bullying could not appear in any SUNY language. So interesting. I'll be curious to see what happens with that. But yes, I think we're running in parallel lines on that issue.
I think there was consultation between.
Yeah. So support there as well, as we've had conversations. That is. Contract negotiations are ongoing with the state for UUP. We're kind of in a final push. If we don't get a contract, a tentative agreement for June 1, we will likely have to go through a whole nother year of negotiations. Not that we would erase what we've done, it's simply that a pay bill cannot be passed. It has to be done before they adjourn for the summer. So there'll be a big push next week on Wednesday. We'll have our event on our campus. Every state-funded SUNY campus is doing a contract action, as we're calling them. Ours will be a march from Sibley over to Hawkins Wednesday at noon. We've already chatted with Pat Rasco and make sure we're on the up and up of what we're allowed to do as we cross through campus. So if you see a bit of a hullabaloo, that'll be us. We won't be so disruptive or anything to cause classes to be what's going on, but it needs to be a visible show of solidarity for our negotiations team. And I want to give kudos out to Canton, who is also doing a march while their middle state visit is happening. So that's commitment for you. I think an ongoing issue for us, as you are well aware of the news, is campus safety, given what's been happening at the high school and how it affected our campus members. That has also been discussed at Faculty Senate. It'll be carried through with our labor management. And it is an agenda item actually for the union chapter presidents at the Delegate Assembly this weekend. So kind of looking at it also from a more SUNY-wide perspective. I think that's it from me. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go on to the division reports, which you all received and hopefully had the opportunity to read ahead of time. And so I'll turn it over to Anne, or if anyone has questions for Anne based on her report that went out. Get to it on the it's the wrong report. First destination, which I had never heard of.
It just got misnamed.
It's what?
Those two reports just got misnamed.
Oh, okay.
The report and first destination.
Okay.
The first destination report for the career development.
Okay. Any questions or any context, Dan, that you want to add?
I have a couple quick announcements.
Okay.
Are there
questions on the first destination report?
No, we're doing IA.
Okay. All right.
The file stuff. Sorry. So just quick announcements then?
Mhm.
Okay, so I did want to share, just because I saw a few people that are here at the event, but David Sibley did a phenomenal talk on Friday evening in Yoakum 200. He's one of the world renowned bird watching guides. And I think the reason I'm partly so excited about it is there were more people in Yoakum 200 than I had seen in a really long time. And so the clapping and the applause and the laughter, it was very humorous report on the psychology of bird identification. It's phenomenal. Mix of alumni, lots of faculty, a lot of retirees, a lot of community members. It was just a really good example of what Plattsburgh is as far as bringing community together with our students. The graduate students in the Center for Earth and Environmental Science organized it. So it was a cool gathering. I think we had about 350, 75 people. A plus on that one. The office is organizing and launched the campaign for Jerry Jean Baptiste, a new endowed scholarship program to support EOP students, and it's specifically focused on academic excellence and perseverance, overcoming hardships. I know a lot of you saw Jerry at the October meeting at the scholars event, so he has a very compelling story and what he achieved. I'm sure President Yeti will probably touch on that later when he talks about Chancellor Awards for Student Excellence. So I won't say any more on that, but we're off to a great start there. Casella Waste Systems is helping us with that for the $25,000 challenge, and we're going to raise $5,000. The Jewish Studies program is hosting a Day of Remembrance event this Wednesday in Scott Holocaust Memorial Gallery. So if you'd like to attend, that's at 4 o'clock. Jewish Studies program is fully funded by the College Foundation. On the finance front for the foundation, we just had a finance committee meeting and approved our recommendation to provide $1.8 million in scholarship dollars next fiscal year. So we are working our way to that $2 million target, which is in Plattsburgh next. And we will just keep going. We just need to keep going on that. The last thing I would just share, in case anybody's curious about it, we have been in discussion with the executive committee of the College Foundation and also legal counsel, just in regards to, the college transitioning to university status. And from the Plattsburgh College Foundation perspective, we're not changing our name at this point in time. Legal counsels confirmed that we don't have to change our certificate of incorporation organizations. So we're a supporting organization. So we support the entity here, no matter what it's called. But we are going to work through our, obviously our bylaws, gift agreements and things of that nature. Our annual corporate resolution that we put together, those all need to be updated, working through that. And as far as why we're not changing the name, the biggest issue is that we've got over 300 endowments that are already in place. To have to go through a name change process or to create confusion with donors is not a sensible thing. We also don't want to signal something that makes donors who are already have us in their will thinking that they have to go change their will or change a beneficiary or be confused. So that's where that stands, and just we're working through that process. But it's all good.
Any questions for Anne? Okay. Thank you. So tell me, whose report is the first destination report? Where did that come from?
I'm the one who just named the file. So the first destination report was read as information to the council.
Okay.
A specific report. If you have questions, or you could probably have a broad Toby Day presentation at the last meeting. Part of what you had asked about related to some of those things. And so probably it was shared. It wasn't a final version of that, but it was shared as information.
Okay, so we'll hold off any questions for Corey till.
If you have
can try.
specific questions about that, just send them in. I can get those answers to Toby.
Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to academic affairs.
Thank you, Heidi. I submitted information to the schools here and lots of exciting things going on. The one thing I realized I didn't include was a project that I've been leading, which is this Thursday, all day Thursday and all day Friday. We have an important 2-day workshop series with Gray Consulting. They're one of the top consulting firms in the United States around assessing the academic portfolio of an institution, looking at the opportunities to develop and build new programs, looking at programs that with more investment could be strengthened and could grow further. And then also figuring out what programs we need to just continue to monitor. So they part of this contract, the contract was funded by the one-time SUNY funds that we applied for last fall. A part of the contract gives us a year-long access to just an enormous database where we can search within the SUNY system, regionally with competitors, nationally, internationally, online, not online. We're very excited about this in academic affairs. We have 25 representatives on campus who are most closely involved in enrollment, retention. You know, we have our director of admissions, the director of undergraduate admissions, director of graduate admissions, director of the Geo Center. She actually can't attend, but Michelle St. Ange will attend instead of her. So I think it's going to be a really important 2 days. And following that, we'll have open sessions with the whole campus to talk about what we learn. You would have seen in here that we had an extensive number of arts and sciences faculty go up to the Minor Institute. And I just think that place is such a gem. I would like to see more ways. I know the president and I have been up there together and have talked about ways to build closer relationships to get more of our students up there. It's an extraordinary place. So I was really proud of those faculty for spending that time. We have a group of business students this week who are going to New York City, which I think is really important that they get that hands-on experience. Brian Newman, the dean of SBE, this building and school, he and I met in follow-up with a meeting that the president and I had with the CEO, CVPH, Michelle LeBeau, on some help they need, in particular with their nursing employees, so that as nurses and their incredible skill set to take care of patients as they move up and are needed in more leadership positions, don't always have budget skills, leadership management skills, and they need them to be skilled in these areas. So they have asked us to develop a series of modules, which Brian and other faculty are working on. One of the things that was interesting to me was that Michelle said she oversees 2 hospitals, that they have the need at both hospitals, that they haven't seen other opportunities to get this kind of professional development. And so I think that if we do this well, it's potentially something that we could put online and offer to much more broadly. So I'm excited about that. And I know you all have had the opportunity to read this. I thought the Transgender Day of Visibility that Feinberg helped host was extraordinary. The room was packed, which, you know, as we all know, there's a lot of student events, whether it's nice weather or whatever, that they're not a lot of participation, but this was an extraordinary event and it was standing room only. So that was really exciting. Our IT area is having to put a lot of increased time into cybersecurity. More than ever before, there are hacking issues. You all would have read about the problems that came with ticketing for the final hockey games. That happened all over the country with that ticketing agency. And I'm confident that TJ Myers, our chief information officer, is doing an extraordinary job focusing in on that. And then the last thing I would just quickly highlight is that Emma Bartshare down in Queensbury, I'm very impressed with the attention she pays to low-income students at SUNY Adirondack, at Queensbury, who are our students, because she cooperated on a grant that resulted in $50,000, where they were able to give 100 Chromebooks to eligible Warren County students. And then they have another set of Chromebooks that students can borrow, you know, and having one student, you know, talk about that, you know, or numbers of students that they do all their homework on their phones. And you realize how that technology is just, it's just not equitable in any way, right? In terms of supporting things. I'm really excited that she's done that work and that our students are benefiting from it.
And Michael, you have a question?
I had a couple of pretty unrelated questions. One curious, just because I saw it out there recently. What is the status of Samuel Dietz from an academic, you know, unit?
It doesn't exist as it once did anymore,
Okay.
because the hospitality management program, it wasn't thriving with big numbers of students. So
Okay.
it had to be absorbed within the School of Business and Economics. It's still here,
Yeah.
but it's not functioning in that way anymore. It is a Starbucks coffee shop faculty, staff, and students in Sibley.
So the other thing I want to toss out here, and it won't take long, but I'd be interested in exploring this more. President Getty was so kind to host a conversation and talking about, fellowships and diversity within faculty ranks and so on and so forth. And I really think that there's an opportunity between institutional advancement, academic affairs, and the work that you're doing to create some fellowships for our faculty that could potentially bring in additional faculty that would support their good work for a 2-year period.
Right.
That would potentially create a new academic pipeline
Right.
in some ways that wouldn't be on the backs of the traditional academic support that we look to at SUNY, because SUNY sometimes isn't going to give us more money.
Right.
There are a lot of private dollars that may want to support a fellowship of some sort and have it embedded in an academic unit. It just wanted to lay it out here because I think there's some opportunity in the scholarship for the young gentleman at EOP is where I kind of thought of it. Here's a current student that a donor was so inspired by to say that they want to get behind the work that our faculty are doing. They're doing some really creative things.
Right.
There might be, and this isn't a new model out there in higher education. I mean, some chairs or, the chair that they hold in their academic unit is named after somebody. So.
I appreciate that suggestion. I'd be happy to talk with you about it
Yeah.
more. I know we would necessarily have to collaborate with Ann Hansen on something like this. Just as an aside, and I don't know if President Yeti mentioned this, but the one very exciting thing that SUNY is already actively providing are the Prodigy Fellows.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a Prodigy Fellow this year, and next year, hopefully, his full salary is paid for by SUNY, and he represents diverse identities.
Yep.
And, the overall goal is hopefully that if the person is happy at the institution, that then we are able to move them into a tenure track line.
And I agree that's a great program. I'm hoping that by triangulating it between kind of, these three areas of our campus, that we might be able to support some programs that may not get the types of resources that SUNY, because they're limited in the amount of resources that they're putting into that program.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent.
Your report had mentioned a trip to the New York Stock Exchange, which I of course love.
Yeah.
Is that just for the School of Business and Economics? How does somebody get into that?
That's the way it's been running.
And how
It's
many?
only 12
So they've done
students.
it before then?
Yeah, they do it every year.
Every year.
And it is funded. I mean, we have, I'm forgetting the term. There's some funding that it's a regular account that we have set up that funds that. So right now it's 12 students. And I think they're accompanied by 2 faculty members. It would be great to have more students go. But I would also say that, part of what makes this School of Business and Economics so strong, their AACSP accreditation is all they do for the business students. It does take money and time.
Yeah.
But maybe that's another thing we could think about in terms of funding, right? And raising more funds so it could be open to students from other majors.
Yeah, and they probably wouldn't have any interest, but I was just wondering, like, oh, I love that they go down there.
Right, right.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? I have one.
For Heidi.
The teaching of reading is in the news, quite a bit now, and it was all over the news this morning. And I'm wondering, since we have, robust teacher preparation program, have there been conversations about the way our education professors are teaching our prospective teachers to teach reading?
Right. I'm sure that we are. We have literacy experts in that department. And I didn't see today's news, but I know that I've been following the studies for looking at the impact of COVID on elementary school students. And they say there's at least a 10-year impact reading second to third grade in particular, that the students are scoring at the same level, not showing the same fluency. So it's definitely a concern. I know we have a very strong school of Health and Human Services. Faculty are very committed and are constantly learning and trying out new things. I can check with Denise, the dean.
Yeah, I just am curious because now, of course, I came through which is whole language. I went from Distar to whole language to, and mini lessons and Lucy Hawkins and all of that. And now they're getting back to, the science of teaching reading.
Right.
I imagine it's going to take some shifting. That's what's going
You know, the other thing, I mean, we hear this from faculty, is that we used to say, no, writing, our students can't write. There's so many writing challenges. They talk now about reading, that to have them read complicated, lengthy piece or discipline. Some students, it's a serious challenge, but that is not just an issue of learning the skills of reading, but that's an issue of what this has done. In terms of your attention span and how will you dig in on something and read and reread a paragraph if you don't understand it.
Thank you.
Initially, I'm not sure how we come back up.
Yeah.
Everything is in 6 sentences or less and no grammar. It does bother me.
All right, Allison, CI,
Sure.
everybody got those reports?
Yes.
And,
I'm passing around a little bit of additional information as well. Just some data I wanted to share. So yeah, there.
Because I'm sitting here on this thing.
Person can take the back of 3.
There's more.
So I can make some comments on my report that I submitted first. Which one is under BIPOC employee news. So of course we talk about the recruitment and retention of our students, but we also have to have conversations about the retention. And we just talked about the recruitment of our employees, right? We want to make sure that our employees are excited and they really want to be here. And so one of the things we were able to do in October was to submit a proposal through, of course, our president and Ken to SUNY Central for additional funding. And so this program that we're hosting at the end of this month, the Toppers and Jazz Night, is one of our first employee initiatives, just to gather our employees so that we know who we are on campus, even though the focus is on BIPOC and LGBTQ plus employees. We've really invited any employee that would like to attend. And I think our response has been great. We have a number of employees who want to come and support those employees. We also invited the deans to come out, cabinet, of course, to come out, and college council, you have an invitation to come as well. We've also partnered with CVPH. We'll be sending they have a diversity committee. They also have a vice president for diversity. They'll be in attendance. We've encouraged some cross collaboration with Clinton Community College, as well as the MLK Commission. So the reality is that our employees don't just stay on campus, they're going out in the community. They need nurses, they need doctors. And so it's really a way to sort of generate some enthusiasm and support for our employees here on campus. We've also been hosting a number of programs in April around sexual assault awareness. Last week, we had a wonderful presentation just regarding Title IX. And so the goal is that we become more prevention focused as opposed to just reactionary to reports. We had a wonderful kickoff event, which was a Teal to Quad event, which was really a wonderful collaboration. And one of the things that we were able to start 2 weeks ago is we now have some additional support through BHSE and their Stop Domestic Violence program, as well as Enough is Enough through Sexual Assault Services of Planned Parenthood. So 2 days per week, we have staff from those agencies who come on campus. It's just additional ways that employees or students can visit with them in a confidential manner. In a confidential manner, we know we have students who are not living on campus. They might be commuters, maybe leaving a domestic relationship. They might not if there's a housing issue or a financial issue. So they're just able to provide additional information and resources. We also have the Enough is Enough through Sexual Assault Services of Planned Parenthood. They actually do 2 days per week. So one is during the day in Hawkins Hall, but then they also have committed to a Thursday evening in ACC from 7 to 9 p.m. to capture students that maybe don't want to go under a watchful eye during the day, that maybe they want to have a private conversation in the evening. So we're looking forward to growing those programs. I listed additional things, but I guess the things I just wanted to comment on are the position announcements that are either have just been reclassified through human resources and are some of which will be posted this week, or other ones that are on the verge. Maybe there was a failed search that will be relaunched and researched. And then the save the dates, I am hoping that College Council can attend the graduation receptions. We also have a DEI internship presentation that we'll be hosting, but especially, for example, the multicultural student graduation reception and the lavender ceremony, when we talk about some of the challenges that students experience and just getting over the hump where they are able to graduate is really significant. So the data that I bought, I'm just want to comment on what you have, and then maybe in the September report, I can do more of a deep dive to explain the data. So the first sheet that you have are just the demographics. And that's important to know what our students look like. So when we talk about how many female students do we have, how many male students do we have, that's that very first report. When we look at the numbers of, for example, all female students to male students, we have about 438 more female students than male students. But when we look at the numbers as they relate to undergraduate students for first gen, so students who would consider themselves first generation college students, where they don't have a parent that has ever attended a college or university, that would be 54% of our undergraduate population in comparison to about 41% males. If we look at where we pull in like our top numbers in terms of our first generation students that are female, it would be the highest numbers would be our Latino, Black, or in our biracial or multiracial communities. If we look at it in terms of males, that would be, again, Latino and Black. The only difference between the females and males is that we pull from a significantly higher number of our Asian male students. So that's just, like I said, some data I wanted to share, but I can certainly do more of a deep dive for the September report. The other things that I've included, just really quickly, one is a breakdown. So this would have been from 2018. Right now, we don't have the data from 2019, right, for first year undergraduate students, because they are scheduled to graduate in May or they'll walk in August. But this looks at what our graduation rate was specifically for all students. But then what I did is a breakdown of students as it relates to our BIPOC student population in comparison to our white students. This doesn't further break it down into like first gen, but certainly we can sort of look at some of that data for a future report. So that breakdown would be on page 3 of the staple copy. And then the last data report, which I wanted to include, would be by race, and according to the IPADS data for students, again, who have come in 2019. So whereas 2018, that report was the graduation rates, this would be students who came in as first year undergraduate new students to campus. So the ethnic breakdowns, but then when you're looking at first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh would be by semesters. So this is a really great report, which I'm hoping to be able to break down more, be able to use with our multicultural success coach so that we can actually see where do we need to develop more services for our students. So for example, if we're losing more students in the sophomore year, let's say at the end of the spring of sophomore year going into junior year, then maybe our focus needs to be more on sophomore students as opposed to first year students that we're losing at a lesser rate. So I think the reality is that we think a lot of times that we're losing students from the first year to second year, and we are. But maybe as we sort of analyze and look at these reports more, we can say, well, specifically, what students are we losing? So like, for example, we're losing a significant number of our Hispanic and Latino students. But I would also venture to say that because this data was pulled from when students came in 2019, we probably lost more of those students because it was also during COVID. We know that our Latino and Hispanic students often are multi-generational households and families, where for those students, they might have had more of an inclination to return home, as opposed to some of our other students who may be decided to, for example, in comparison, our Black or African-American students, this report would show that they were about 55%, so less than their white counterparts, but certainly more than our Latino students. The last thing that I just wanted to mention, because I've mentioned it in a cabinet meeting, is just a new initiative that we have with our academic advising area. And this is one of our retention initiatives, specifically with a focus on our BIPOC and LGBTQ+ students. And so students have the ability to go online, for example, when they are withdrawing from the college or university, they can just go online and withdraw. And one of the we've worked with academic advising on, and this was probably maybe a month after I started in this position, is I asked them, is there any way that we could sort of not put a barrier in the process, but just slow it down just a little bit, to ask students, are you sure that you want to leave? Is it anything that we can do? Do you want to have a conversation with someone? And so with a little bit of technology, Elizabeth Burnett, the director of academic advising, was to put in a couple of additional fields, which one of the fields is, if you would, and this is the last question, if you would like to talk to someone or if you're having second thoughts before we process your withdrawal, please check who we can reach out to. We also, based on the information that they put into the rationale, sometimes even if a person puts no, we'll also see if they might be willing to have an additional conversation. And I would say that we have not seen a huge rate of students who have agreed to follow-up conversations, but we have seen some students. And the data would show that if we have more information about the reasons why students are leaving, that maybe on the front end, we can address more of the concerns about why students are leaving. For example, one consistent concern that came up at the end of last semester with students choosing to leave was just some concerns in one of the first year residence halls. And so obviously between the police department, between Corey, between the dean of students, we had some additional conversations about, are there some different things that we can do to make sure that these students feel a little bit more comfortable in the residence halls. We also maybe had some students who mentioned bias or feeling like they were discriminated against. Well, part of what we learned in some of those conversations is that maybe a person had a private conversation with an employee on campus, but it was never reported, or they didn't give the person permission to report. And instead of the issue maybe being addressed, what they decided to do was to simply leave the university. This specific example actually deleted all of the students' information, except for a couple of different fields because it was important. But one is a couple of identifiers. One is we asked the students, are they in a fully online program? We have had some students who have transferred because they didn't necessarily feel connected, but maybe part of that might have been because they were also in a fully online program. This specific student mentioned wanting to transfer because they felt like people treated them like garbage. So a lot of times, and I wanted to include that because I think a lot of times we feel like the students maybe think the employees treat them like garbage, but maybe again, even as you mentioned, Michelle, like the bullying, maybe sometimes students feel like they're being bullied or harassed, but this would be from their own peers. But also just looking to have those additional follow-up conversations. And this was an example of a student whose parent reached out to academic advising, who also agreed to have a follow-up conversations with DEI. And this student has, as a preliminary measure, agreed to take back to rescind their withdrawal and to continue on into the fall semester. So this person is actually like a success story But I think only because we had a measure in place to be able to have some continuous and follow-up conversations with those students. So I'll end there.
We just add, having done this with high school students, because I'm archaic and old, when I started teaching, they could drop out at 16. And so we tried, obviously, to figure out why that was happening. And we put in our, wasn't my suggestion, it was one of the people who worked for me. And, you know, would you help us? We're trying to figure out, you know, whatever language one would use with 16-year-olds, believe me, you had to pick your words. You know, we are trying to find out what went wrong, why you feel that, you know, that kind of thing. And we got an amazing response out of that rather than that. Now, again, they're high school kids, so that's a different world. And it was lower income kids we found were having issues. Fast forward, I went to college here and 7 million years ago. And that was also a group of people who dropped out at a higher rate just because I knew them, because Plattsburgh's small. Yeah, because they felt like they couldn't keep up with the others. And we're looked down on. And I know that's not an ethnic thing, but it certainly is a human thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know, just thought I'd throw that out. But the way one asks questions, sometimes you get a better response. Who knows? I don't.
I'm curious in the great information. I'm looking forward to more as you share. Are you able to couple this information with like affinity groups? Because a lot of students, that's part of why they stay, right? They find a particular group on campus so are you able to take it to that next level to see maybe what affinity groups are holding on? And I'm talking beyond like the student support services and the honors program, like the athletic program just showed us statistically they graduate at a higher rate, they're doing better. So are there other subcategory affinity groups you could be investing more resources on that would yield, you know?
So Corey, Jake, Steve, and I have just started having these conversations because Corey and her team were able to run a report on just related to some of the student association funding, some of the more active groups. And I think there are certainly some markers that we could talk about developing, especially with this new system, where instead of just identifying students by race or gender or first gen status, that we can add some additional markers related to activities that they're involved in to follow and track the students to see if it has any impact on them and their graduation rates. I mean, I think anecdotal information would suggest students, for example, who are involved in African Unity or Black Onyx, the Black Student Union, or students who, and this might not necessarily relate to some of the multicultural Greek life organizations because they have not been as active. I would venture to say our general fraternity and sorority life organizations tend to show a higher retention rate. But just being able to track that data, which we have not in the past, I think is one of the collaborations we've just started talking about.
I'm also wondering if it also would identify deficits of affinity groups for students.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So if we're trying to provide more opportunities for Asian students, for example, and we're just finding that there's just not a high level of participation in an identified affinity group, might we calibrate or recalibrate in such a way to put some resources that might activate some experiences for them?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think it's a lot of opportunity for things we haven't necessarily done in the past.
From a preventative side of this in the future, what happens with the students or the people that were on that floor that this person said treated them like garbage? Is there any kind of outreach to them or discipline or?
Yes, so this is a student that we're continuing to have conversations with. But some students, so for example, we did have a situation last semester where a student decided that they were just going to leave. They agreed to a conversation, but they had already decided for their mental health reasons that they would no longer stay on this campus. And there were additional conversations that took place between student conduct, Corey was involved in those conversations between university police. But the reality is that once students are cited for certain behavior, I think the conversation then begins more with student conduct and what they look at as serving an educational purpose versus those things that would require a student either to be kicked out of the residence hall or to possibly be suspended or kicked out of school. And I think those are the conversations that we have not necessarily had on campus, and we've just started having those. I don't know if you want to comment more on that.
I'll go to that specific one, but I think, I'm sorry, Mark.
I would just follow the direction of that question. You can have a situation where 2 or 3 people can poison a floor. Okay? And it's important to find out who those 2 or 3 people are and deal with that. You know, you can, you get fortunate in the sense that you have an opportunity to talk to a student and you're able to convince that student that, you know, their anger, which when they fill that form out, it's directed at the institution, but their anger is really at those students. But that does not solve the problem at all. I mean, that problem's got to get addressed. Okay, what's going on that floor?
Yes, I agree. So that is why that was one of my questions for the first candidate that we saw today for the VP search. Because it is just a very new conversation that I've been having with ESS, and I think it has to continue. And we have to develop a plan and a collaborative protocol. Otherwise, we continue to lose students, but we don't do anything about the problems that exist. So
Let me ask one question. How do we do vis-a-vis the other school in the SUNY system?
yeah, so we can track that. Like there is some general data that we can have to show, like, for example, graduation rates. I did look at some of the retention rates, just general retention would be sort of middle of the road. But I can certainly bring.
Oh, no,
some
but
that-
you say we're about at.
Yeah, about average. Yeah, it wouldn't be on the bottom.
I think all of this conversation goes back to the piece in our strategic plan about belonging, which we have continual conversations. What does that actually mean? What does it look like to belong? That's been an ongoing discussion to define that and to think about how we can influence a student's sense of belonging.
Yes, and we've already carved out, so like something new that we're doing this year is Jake is in charge of orientation, Jake Avery, and he's already carved out training for staff this summer to take place in July. We've already talked about how we increase the amount of time we have in front of new students. So new students who are coming in with some of the behaviors of racial slurs or things that they did in the high schools. This is for traditional age students, that we're able to have a really robust conversation with these students about our values and expectations, so that we're not just first talking to students about the expectations after they've already said or done something, and it ruins the experience for another student on campus.
For this particular student, did you reach out to her academic advisor?
I didn't. I don't know if academic advising did. I did not reach out to that person, but the person did get I'm thinking about a conversation. The person does have a different academic advisor now. They did not change their major, but they have been moved to a different academic advisor. I didn't have a conversation with the first advisor, and I'm not sure who that person was. I couldn't say whether or not academic advising had a conversation with that person either. And I did take out I'm making sure I did take out their major, so.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, Corey, go on. Oops.
There we go.
So I won't go into a lot of detail. I'm happy to address questions. But I will just say in general, admission for fall, new student recruitment and enrollment looks great. We are definitely on track to hit the goals that we have for the fall. As the report says, we've seen some nice trends with North Country students, North Country EOP students, out of state, particularly Vermont. And those were all places where we had put additional resources and effort. So it's definitely paying off there. May 1st is the deadline for deposits. It's a soft deadline, but that's really, until we get to May 1st, I don't feel 100% like I can take a deep breath, but I think we're on the right path and feel good about that. In ESS, we have a lot of searches going on right now. The Director of Global Education Office, Jackie Vogel, is retiring after 34 years maybe. And so that's a big loss. So that search is ongoing. We also have searches happening for an EOP counselor, community directors in our residence halls, and then a new position, student outreach and success coordinator, essentially a case manager to help us deal with sort of more complex, higher level student needs, students who might need multiple resources. So hopefully have that search wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. And then since no one is here from the Student Association, I would also report that Student Association elections are happening tomorrow. There are no contested positions though, which is very unfortunate. And there are actually some positions that are don't have anyone on the ballot. So there will be a second special election before the end of the student government. I'm going to take questions. Still a little jet lagged. And I can try to answer your questions if you'd like about first destination survey. I might be able to answer those.
You don't have any questions about that, Jim? I thought you had a question when.
Oh, okay, I was going back to that.
I can try.
Okay. If I can find it.
I brought it on myself.
Yeah, they had the class of 2022 working full time. So it would appear 25% are not working full time.
Correct.
What's the national average?
That I can't tell you.
That seemed to you to be unusual.
That's about where we usually land at this point.
I don't know. I'm just thinking it seems like a lot. I mean, the unemployment rate is like 3.5% nationally. And this would be almost 25% of our students aren't working full time.
They might be working part-time. They might be doing graduate school.
I'm just gonna ask, is that,
Right.
that has not been subtracted from that
I was
stat,
gonna
right?
say, we,
Oh, there's a ton in
as
graduate.
an individual that went to undergrad school and was in one of those tracks before, that often would be the case with us, Jim, that a lot of the unemployment would be in that category of either doing another semester of prep to go into a master's course. I myself had to take some classes, right? Before I could go into my master's because I transitioned. So they were in that weird kind of fluctuation. So I wouldn't say that unemployment rate probably is as high as reported in that report.
No, I maybe normal. That's why I was wondering if the national average was 76. They were about the same, but the national average was 85.
Yes.
Ask Google, they'll tell you.
And if you are interested in more details about first destination, I know Toby would welcome the opportunity to come back and speak to you and do a report if you.
I was just mentioning, we did talk when Toby presented at cabinet about people reporting just mental health challenges as well, and anxiety of working full time. Some people are deliberately choosing not to work in a full-time position.
Oh, no, I doubt the reason. I think sometimes it's just helpful to compare what, maybe the national average is 60 or something. Just seemed like a lot of people, especially when you go back to, maybe that was COVID, that would be 63%. We're working. That would obviously 37% in something else. That's a lot. It would seem to me to be a lot, but I could be wrong.
I know that a trend nationally is a lot of people are going towards gig work, right? So they're becoming Uber drivers or delivery. I don't do any of these things. I don't know. DoorDash, there you go. So they would not be included under full-time. And they don't ever consider themselves a full-time work either, even if they are working a number of hours.
No, I was just wondering, just, when parents say like,
Yeah.
said, I don't think Binghamton is 76 or is it?
And we've been collecting those data over a period of time, so it's possible that some people in that category do have full-time employment now. I mean, it's been months and months that takes us to try to track all these people down, and
The trend is pretty positive.
it has been post-COVID, it's been very positive.
Any other questions for Corey or comments on her report? Okay, and Todd is not here, so we don't have a report from administration and finance. So we'll move on to Dr. Vignetti's president.
So a couple things that before I just get into the actual written comments that I've got, I wanted to again emphasize that some of the conversation that we've had is around the data that's been handed out. And Corey said it quite succinctly. We're really striving for a sense of belonging on this campus. And how do you define that? What does it look like? I think at the end of the day, sense of belonging would indicate that we have very robust graduation rate, 4-year, 5-year graduation rates, that we have essentially no gaps among students in terms of either first gen, BIPOC students, eligible students. And some of the data that Allison handed out to us today does show some significant gaps among different student groups. And I think part of it may relate to this longer piece of paper that you gave to us, Allison, which basically shows year to year retention rates. So if you look at the aggregate for that class of 961, by the time we hit the end of year 3, we have 592 students. So that becomes the $64,000 question. I don't have any reason to say that we're 64,000 except it's an old game show. But the $64,000 question is, do we know why these students are leaving? And the answer to that is, it depends. And some of that comes in that sheet of paper that Allison's provided in terms of how does a student feel that they were treated on this campus? What does it mean to have a family or a situation at your home where you have to stop out for a while? What does it mean your finances run out and you've got to go to work? So there's a myriad of reasons why students come and go. What I'm hopeful is that as we work on these and identify them, is that we will see these numbers continue to rise, because I will say this once and I'll say it at least 10 times. The secret to our success is retention. That's it's plain and simple. We are doing a great job, I will say, in terms of the admission side of the house. We're finding the students, we're recruiting the students. I see it at every open house. I see the amount of work. Corey's report is filled with data in terms of the numbers of individuals. The secret sauce, Plattsburgh, is retention. And the individual that we're interviewing today gets that. I suspect all the candidates that we're going to speak to, its retention becomes a secret sauce. Even in our own financial modeling and projections, when we elevate retention rates to that 80–85% range, the spreadsheet becomes very, very, I'll say, friendly. It's going to remain the lower retention rates that our spreadsheet stays in the red. So I would say that in many ways, this all comes back to one simple solution, and that's retention. And that's really the focus of the campus at this point in time through all the work that's going on. So
Do we have any sense of where they're going?
do we have a sense of where they're going? Well,
They're leaving Plattsburgh because they don't like it. They must be going someplace where presumably they think it's better. I'm assuming.
Well, the young man that, the example we were talking about earlier, he indicated he was transferring. In other words, he was dissatisfied
No, I'm just wondering
with what was
where
happening.
they're going, and are they, maybe they don't want to be in college anymore, or they figure it'd be better at another school, or they want to be closer to home, or.
yes to all of it. All
Yeah,
the things are happening. And that data, we can get our hands around that data. So a good component of our incoming class for next fall are transfer students. In fact, our transfer student market is getting close to eclipsing what our traditional, we think about the 17, 18-year-old student who we would expect to spend 4 years. That transfer student is the one that's becoming more dominant in terms of our market. So,
We're doing a good job attracting people as well.
right, so
Those people originally from the Plattsburgh area, so they're.
not necessarily, I meet students from Vermont, I meet students from Utica, I meet students from,
All right, so they're not transferring to get closer to home then
Right.
necessarily, yeah.
so I think if we had if we all had trackers besides our phones, we could actually see the migration patterns of students in higher ed. The one thing that we do know is there's fewer of those trackers because the birth rate dropped about 17, 18 years ago. So there's fewer students. One thing I was going to mention, I'm really off script here, but when I met with Michael and Jim and with Heidi, I pointed out to them that on the SUNY main page, there's something called Fast Facts. So that's just go to the Fast Facts tab and you touch it. It expands into this multiple accordion of all sorts of data about demographics and enrollment. And what you can look at is SUNY Plattsburgh. And one bit of, I'll say, fact about SUNY Plattsburgh, back in 2017, SUNY Plattsburgh had 1,500 North Country students. And that's our economic region. So that's the 7 counties that comprise the North Country. Fast forward to the fall of 2022, that number had dropped to 1,000. Our total enrollment has dropped by 1,000 total. So half of our drop of enrollment in 5 years has been fewer North Country students coming here. Essentially a 1,500 drop to 1,000. I'll talk a bit more about what we're doing to address that, but I think it's important. That data is very powerful because it demystifies the question, well, do we know what's going on? Well, that's a pretty strong answer. It says the North Country isn't providing us the number of students that it did in the past. They're just not there. High school classes are getting smaller. I'm sure you're all aware of consolidation and closing of schools. That's not because they want to be more efficient. That's because there's fewer kids. So I think that's a reality that we're looking at here for the North Country. So anyway, let me start in my comments and I'll make this as quick and light as possible here. So first of all, I just appreciate the opportunity to visit with lunch with the College Council today. And also specifically the earlier meeting that Heidi and Jim and Michael and I had together to discuss sometimes the broader issues affecting higher education today. And again, I appreciate these meetings and I'd like to continue them. And I think it's great to, again, hear your interest and also your advocacy for the campus. You've already read the divisional reports and you've heard from the vice presidents with respect to the activities in areas and heard from our representatives from campus shared governance. So again, as I promised, I'll be succinct today and I'll be happy to take questions afterwards. So as we are entering the final month of the spring semester, the campus is full of activities and celebrations. Faculty and students are closing out the 2022-23 academic year with events, special speakers. For example, the BFA art exhibit that happened yesterday in our galleries, graduation celebrations and other gatherings. And I would just say, if you've got the opportunity, you don't necessarily have to come to them all. But not only would your presence be appreciated, it just demonstrates the fact that you are some of our most powerful advocates. So thank you in advance for being able to attend. Last week, I traveled to Rochester and Syracuse. I met with alumni and friends of SUNY Plattsburgh, including our most recent honorary doctoral degree recipient, Judge Glenn Sutterby. Glenn says to say hello. The Cardinal graduates that Andrew and I met truly treasure the time that they had here at SUNY Plattsburgh, much in the same way that our current students do. There's a tremendous amount of parallel description and experience. Whether you're a student in 2023 or a student in 1973, the experience sounds and feels the same. So you are all unique, but in some ways, you're not much more different than the students that we serve today. The theme that I heard was that this was a foundational place, for their education, and it transformed their lives. And it was reinforced in certainly my visit to Los Angeles and San Francisco last month. And as you know, SUNY Plattsburgh never really leaves you. And it certainly was evident in those conversations. As we continue to grow the next generation of Cardinals and address our enrollment pillar of the strategic plan, I'm really proud to share that this I've been admitted to college program saw 3 special Wednesdays this spring with more than 300 area 8th graders participating in a day of activities. This academic year, we had students from Beekmantown, Rushton-Mariah, Northeastern Clinton, Peru, Saranac, and Ticonderoga. And SUNY Associate Andrew Nietti leads this effort in the Office of the President, along with Denise Simard. This initiative truly does take a village. And I'll just give kudos to Sharice Granger as well. Sharice, in many ways, is the glue that keeps us all working together. So thank you, Sharice. But what we've discovered is that well over 120 faculty, staff, and university administrators make this program a success. So something that started as a little idea of like, hey, let's bring 8th graders to campus, has morphed into something that touches almost all aspects of campus. This is essentially a powerful way for us to demonstrate to North Country students, and I call them North Country kids when I see them, that there's a home for you at SUNY Plattsburgh. And so this is designed to elevate our enrollments as we move forward. It's going to take a few years. What is it? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Doing this kind of activity is foundational to bringing North Country students. And I would say that I'm hopeful that the council members can join us on Monday, May the 1st at 3 p.m. We'll be celebrating the program with volunteers and supporters. So you'll get an official invitation in the mail to join us to basically say thanks to everyone who made this work. Well over 600 students came to the campus this year. And the goal is to bring this up to 1,000 by next year. So with respect to SUNY in totality, we hosted the SUNY Chancellor, John King, on Friday, March the 24th. And again, I want to thank those members of the council who were able to attend during his visit. We were able to showcase for the Chancellor our Center for Cybersecurity and Technology, the Damanus Nursing Skills Lab, the Center for Earth and Environmental Sciences, and many of our faculty, staff, and students who were able to meet with them. We were campus number 31 on the list of 64 to visit, and he texted me a personal text afterwards calling his stop here at Plattsburgh a phenomenal campus visit. I've also had follow-up conversations with Dr. Donald Linderman, who is the new Senior Vice Chancellor for Student Success, to discuss the implementation of data analytics dashboards that we've purchased from the California state system. We will be the only SUNY institution that's poised to use this dashboard program, and we're excited for the prospects. And to give you an idea, the data that Allison Bird distributed today will actually be embedded in these dashboards. So every program, every major can ask these kinds of questions. How have we done with our students? Where are we seeing challenges? And really opens up the possibility of opportunities to change the way in which we approach how we support our students in post-graduation. So on the topic of enrollment, as was reported by Corey's report, our admissions efforts for fall and summer continue to advance well. Undergraduate applications continue to track well as they did last year, largely due to the free SUNY application period. It's a great idea. In addition, acceptances are tracking far above where they were a year ago. And I think I just need to stop and pause and say I appreciate and thank the work of our admissions staff, faculty, and others who are actively engaged in all these yield activities with certainly for all the students that we're accepting. Again, we're on our pace to hit our enrollment goal of 1,410 new undergraduate students and 290 new graduate students for the fall of 2023. And this will be a grand total of 1,700 new Cardinals, which puts us on place to meet the goals we've set for ourselves in the Plattsburgh Next, and certainly the pillar number 1 of the strategic plan. Our open houses in March and April were incredibly well attended with more than 600 families participating. We also held bus trips and overnight visits for prospective New York area students in conjunction with the open houses. We did a phenomenal job of opening our campus and welcoming, and we had great weather as well. So it really helps. And the campus looks beautiful this time of the year. The Office of Admission is also working with Clinton Community College to enroll our first class of the integrated dual degree program in nursing. This has a goal of 20 students with preference to North Country applicants. The program allows students to take classes at both of our institutions on the path to a nursing BSN, during which they can live on the SUNY Plattsburgh campus. So these Clinton students will be embedded in our world. They'll be able to live in the residence halls, participate in the meal plan. As I've said to John Kowal, they are both Cougars and Cardinals at the same time. It's a wonderful blending of the two campuses. As I've been alluding to, our Vice President for Enrollment Student Success Search is kicking off this week with the hosting of the 4 finalists. The interviews began today and they'll conclude this Friday evening. I do know that if you receive our email distributions, you'll see that each candidate's CV or resume is being posted. There is an opportunity to visit via Zoom if you'd like to listen to the candidates or all of them. So that's okay. And the goal remains unchanged. We want to announce our next VP by the end of the month, assuming negotiations and all that conversation goes well. And with the desire to start on July the 1st, which will make Corey somewhat happy. We'll see. So again, I just say thank you to Corey for all that she's doing. On the topic of budgets, as Michelle Toth mentioned, the state of New York budget process has been on hold through the month. Today was supposed to be the deadline on the extender. Haven't heard, maybe there's some news that came out of Vogel's office. From what we do know, there's great news within the framework of the budget for SUNY and in general for SUNY Plattsburgh. Both of the State Assembly and the Senate released a response to the executive budget that stated essentially for the SUNY to increase state operating aid to the individual campuses, which has remained flat. There's not been a huge increase in what we've received in many years. I believe it's 2019 is the last time there was any change in the state operating aid to campuses. While neither the Senate or the Assembly included the governor's proposed tuition increase, both actually added additional funding into their proposals to basically act as an offset for the lack of that tuition increase. So I think this all works out. And I appreciated your insight, Michelle. Sounds like the SUNY part of it is a problem. We never know what the backroom deals are, right? But again, this is an important development. I think it's going to help us as a campus with respect to the additional funding. The state proposals that came out also included money for the faculty alliance that were created a year ago, and also money to continue to narrow the TAP gap. So that's good news for the campus. It helps lower the unfunded mandates that we certainly have trouble meeting. And other developments that the current budget include money for technology upgrades, and certainly that's important for our growth and sustainability. So that would be a welcome addition to the campus. And there are two important aspects to this year's budget that will directly impact us. First is the inclusion of academic program review reform. If we could use the word hallelujah. It takes far too long for academic programs to be processed and approved as it certainly stands right now. If we're going to be a nimble and effective educational organization, we've got to be able to design and implement state-of-the-art academic programs that meet student demand. And this review reform would be a first step in that direction. The second aspect that was in the original Senate and Assembly bills was the utilization of nurse simulation in terms of the simulators that we have upstairs in Hawkins Hall. And although I don't know the fate of the academic review component, I'm very pleased to report that the Senate and the Assembly have passed legislation back on March 27th that will address the nursing shortage here in the state of New York. The two bills, S447C and A3706A, they will now permit nursing programs to provide up to 1/3 of a nursing student's clinical work in high-tech simulation environments. And that's a great improvement. Finally, our own work here on the campus towards our fiscal stability on campus is going to be informed by the budget developments as they occur. I share Michelle's enthusiasm to see where things land. The budget developments are being processed by the various vice presidents. There's an update here in your packets. And they will continue to work on this for the remainder of the month as we approach the deadline for the SUNY system. And the last thing I want to just mention is, again, commencement, Saturday, May the 20th. We're returning to a school-based approach that was used in past years as we joyfully recognize the accomplishments of the class of 2023. We're going to maximize attendance for our grads and their families. Each family will receive up to 6 tickets. As you can expect, there's probably going to be some horse trading going on among families. I'm not sure how that works at SUNY Plattsburgh. I know in my experience as an undergraduate, there was a little bit of a seller's market for tickets. Who knows what happens here? But we want to maximize the attendance. So what will happen is at 9 a.m. graduates of the School of Education, Health and Human Services will process. At noon, graduates of the School of Business and Economics will be processed at noon. And then 3 p.m. we'll have Arts and Sciences. So as I conclude, I just want to express my thanks for your interest and your support of this fabulous university. For me personally, it's an honor to serve here and join with many others in supporting our students, our faculty, and our staff. And I just always like to finish by saying this is truly a special place. And as our alumni tell me, a place that changes their lives, continues to be a source of pride. And just as an anecdotal piece, we met with alums both in Syracuse and Rochester. When I was at the hotel in Syracuse, this individual held the elevators. We were getting ready to drive to Rochester. And so we got out, we got in the parking deck. And Andrea said, thanks for holding the door. He goes, no problem. She said, do you live in the area? Like, he says, what's it like living in Syracuse? He says, well, I don't live here. I live north. She says, oh, so do we. She says, we live in a place called Plattsburgh. He says, that's where I went to school. And it was just, so all of a sudden the conversation morphed into why he loved it here. I believe he was a club athlete. I have to find out whether he was on the hockey team. He's actually close to the area of Messina is. So it was fascinating that there are Cardinals everywhere. And his response to me was this. He says, there's a whole bunch of us Cardinals here. We just love to get together and drink. So that's the story. And I don't have any evidence. I don't have all. That's just. So again, thank you for all you do. Thanks for the opportunity to Marty.
Is there any possibility, you brought up the nursing program, is there any possibility that the state will authorize Plattsburgh to be able to accept more students into that program?
So that would be a local decision here. And that's going to be, and I want to, provost can do a better job of answering this. It's going to be predicated on what's the current capacity of the faculty staff that run that program. But the other part that I'm more interested in is I would really like to see an additional number of North Country students go into our nursing program. And so the provost and I had a great conversation with Michelle LeBeau about the creation of scholarships that would be North Country central. And one idea that we basically shared was the idea of if you received a scholarship, perhaps it would be a full ride, you would provide service back to the hospital for a number of years. That would allow you to just remain debt-free. And I think that's a fabulous way to build capacity. With the nursing simulation, that does allow for a little more flex when it comes to the clinical placements. But I think it's a conversation that the nursing program will need to have with the provost and Dean Samard as to what they can actually accommodate.
But as you know, as we are trying in every way we can to increase enrollment, that's a ready supply of students.
Absolutely.
There's always been a significant number who have applied and have not been accepted into that program because the program was capped out.
Right.
Now, I know if Troy Joseph was here, he would probably be able to tell you a little story that's a little bit narrative in terms of how the number of nursing apps has gone down slightly, but our yield has changed slightly as well. There's a lot more competition for nursing students, and I think there's more institutions that are opening up nursing programs as well. So, but I don't know if Corey wants to add to that.
We could still take more.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the idea that you were talking about. I think you could, pick up enough students, and if it meant you had to increase staffing, you'd have the wherewithal to do it.
Well, an important thing to keep in mind in terms of the complexity of the picture is how much the salary for nursing faculty.
Yeah.
What you need to recruit nursing faculty right now is far above what we've ever paid. And we need to move it up in order to succeed. Put alongside of that, the fact that when we're all working on our cuts, right? Those are faculty lines. That's where,
Yeah.
that's what I unfund. And so how do I hit my targets at the same time as I need to save lines in order to potentially build? The other thing we are doing that is exciting, it's more delayed than I wanted it to be, is we're developing an accelerated nursing program, which would be a post-bac program. So students who took a bio degree or, basically met the basic sciences they would need so that they already had a college degree could come and get that nurse, qualify for nursing licensure in a much abbreviated time. I think that will be popular as well.
I don't think we even have one in this country. My niece went searching for one, wanted to stay here and
Yeah.
she had to go downstairs.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. And
All we need
Marty,
is
to
money.
your point is that basically the RN to BSN program that we're working with Clinton, that does allow students who may not meet the criteria for initial admission into our program to be able to get into an RN program. And then as they transition, because as that program unfolds, by the time they're in year 4, they're 100% BSN on our campus. And as now I'll go back to this, I appreciate Allison showing this, is because no program retains all of its students. So when you plan a program, you go, well, we really like having 50 students coming in year 1, but by the time we hit year 4, we're down to perhaps 30 or something like that. This allows the program to backfill and put nursing students into year 4 that we wouldn't have had in the past. So it keeps the programs robust. Spaces. Good. Michael, I know you got to go.
More of a statement. Again, I want to thank you again for having the exercise where Jim and Heidi and I were able to have a conversation. I guess, I don't know if it's a leveling cautious optimism or what, but the budget is late and there's a lot of things that get traded during a budget. And I continue to be very concerned from a financial landscape, not just about the college, but the system as a whole. There's lots of rumors out there, new chancellor, tone and temperature, are there consolidation plans and I'm not trying to stir rumors. I'm just saying, I think it would be really helpful. And maybe this is in a future where we can have a SUNY individual, one of the vice chancellors or one of the legislative directors from SUNY to give us a better understanding of what is SUNY's kind of long range plans so that we can make sure that we're tethering our work together. The editorial in the Press Republican, again, I don't think said, anybody should be concerned that the house is quite on fire, but people should know where the exits are and, where the fire alarms are. And just, so I just want to make sure that we're constantly positioning ourselves nimble and to kind of stay ahead of it. The relationship that you and the new chancellor had was very obvious when we were here. I think that's great. I just want to make sure that that we're not on either end of that pack. I think right in the middle is where we belong, which is a good thing. But whatever we can do to continue to punch above our weight. So,
and I think the other point that you raised, Michael, is that the chancellor, when he was here, he said exclusively that our solution to our enrollment is retention.
Yep.
And that's where he's driving his focus. I described to him the work that we're doing as it connects to the plan, also the work the provost will be doing with respect to the dashboards. He connected me to Donald Linderman. Then he was here Friday. We had an hour-and-a-half conversation on Monday. And what we're doing in many ways is cutting edge for the system. So we will be, I would say, in terms of talk about a lead of anything, we will be a leader of the system to help full system understand what does it mean to do enrollment management.
And that's what I'm saying is if we kind of get into that position, we have to find a way to educate our community about that, to ease some of the concerns that are out there, because perception becomes reality. And sometimes that reality can become reality if people don't understand what's going on. So we gotta it's our job as college councilmen to help take that message into the community.
If I could just comment on that, Michael, I think one of the realities we face right now in terms of SUNY and its long-term vision is the turnover in the leadership.
Yep.
So interim provost, I think the DEI top person has been finishing up, the chancellor finishing up. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of leadership change in a very brief amount of time. And I don't think that most of us who have our separate connections to SUNY via our roles have been hearing a clear vision. So, I think that would be ideal. I don't think it's there right now. And probably these new people are getting in their positions and they're starting to collaborate, and then we have more potential.
But what I always think is nice for alignment is when Chancellor King took responsibility of being chancellor. He stated explicitly, I'm here to support student success. I'm looking at ways in which we elevate economic development and growth in the state of New York. I'm looking at ways to grow the enrollment of SUNY to 500,000. He aligned himself with the governor's vision on this. So he is pushing us out. I'd love to have conversations about 500,000 because that to me indicates we have a plan as to where those 500,000 students would be. Sure. So there are certainly opportunities to work as a system.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the landscape of higher education overall is facing challenges. Just, how do we stay ahead of the curve? Right?
And the Army. Sorry, if you heard those ads on the news, where they're shocked. The Army got caught off guard with its recruitment. Their statistics for this year were 25% less than they had told the government that they were going to be able to recruit. Yeah. Oops. They didn't look at the statistics of the eligible new recruits is what happened.
Birth rate dropped.
Oh.
And you've also got, unemployment is down. That's a big difference.
Yeah. It's military. Oh,
It's decimating community colleges. And that's a huge thing that's hitting the community colleges.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Plattsburgh, one of the things right now, comment made by a bunch of friends I was just having a conversation with, and many of them are business owners. And they said, if you have a job, if you don't have a job in Plattsburgh right now, you don't want one.
Huh.
Because it's just, the demand is that great.
Yes.
I like to comment. I really support the idea of having the accelerated nursing program because the students that have the bachelor's degree from other fields, they are usually stronger students compared to the high school students.
Right.
Because they have the basic.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And also usually strong clarity that this is what they want to do.
Yep.
I have a next door neighbor who teaches nursing at Clinton, and she has been commenting to me about the numbers of students she has who are not fully clear, committed, they're struggling, they didn't think it was going to be this hard, do I really want to do this? So all that wavering, I think, is not in place when we have a post-bac program.
Could it be a 1-year program or 2?
I think it would take more than a year. I think it's a year and a half.
Yeah,
or two.
18, depending on the
Yeah.
background of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just happened to know about that. I helped a niece try to get into a program and she wanted to stay here or in the North Country. And that's why I went, oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
At Binghamton is the accelerated program is 1-year program.
Does it take 1 year? It takes more than 1 year. I think Sid is saying.
Yeah, it was at least
a year
depending
and a
on
half.
what you came in with from your bachelor's degree, the science, the math and the whatever. It was 18 months to 2 years.
At Binghamton.
Yeah. One college said it wasn't, it was a year, but then they didn't certify you until you finished all the, obviously, and they didn't include the in-hospital experiences with.
Yes,
Sorry, I thought it was kind of funny.
Cognitive courses. completed before they could be accepted in the.
Probably.
Clinics, you
Yeah.
lost that word, fell right on my.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, so I had a couple of things. I guess Corey, this might be your last meeting with us, so we don't meet again till the summer and there should be somebody in place. So thank you for your, clear and concise reporting and all the work that you've done. I want to thank also Dr. Agnetti for meeting with Michael and Jim and me. We got some really interesting information on enrollment demographics. Jim sent a list of questions ahead of time, and we had some good conversations around a lot of different things. And one of those things I was interested to read Allison's report, because one of those things was, how do we recruit a more diverse faculty and staff? And it seems like she's doing some work around retaining the staff that we do have, and creating an environment where they feel that they are welcome and belong, which is great. And hopefully that can extend to the larger Plattsburgh community as well, in terms of feeling comfortable in this environment. I would encourage council members to take advantage. Dr. Agnetti is more than willing to meet with small groups of us. Maybe we can work out something ahead of, a couple of weeks ahead of a council meeting where a couple of us can get together and talk about, just have a conversation about things that interest you, about what's going on on campus, or questions that you might have, concerns you might have. So keep that in mind as we look at next year's schedule.
Yeah, and Heidi, if you don't mind, I was hoping maybe we could get together and just get a summary of what was discussed, those of us who are not at the meetings, so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I can, actually, I can sort of
Oh, I don't mean to give
list some of those.
It's,
I can put those things in an email and just share out some of the things that.
Yeah. Or we can go into exec session and talk about,
What?
we can go into an exec session after the next meeting maybe, or in the, or just whatever.
Okay,
So we
all
all
right, that's a good, maybe going forward, if we have one of those meetings, just get together afterwards. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that you'll see down at the bottom under new business is our list of meetings for next year. This is our last meeting of this year. The first thing on the list is a retreat. And we had talked about that at our last couple of meetings, the desire for the council to have a retreat as we used to have, which would be, a day long, different sessions. So what I want to do is reach out to the council via email, start thinking about sessions you might like to have at this retreat. I'm thinking 3 to 4 sessions over the course of the day. So if you have ideas for conversation, discussions, presentations, people you might want to bring in, you want to have somebody from SUNY, maybe we could get somebody from SUNY. That might be one session. I was thinking getting Dan Steck and Billy Jones in to talk about what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
State government and funding SUNY. Don't laugh.
That'd be great.
So, just brainstorm some ideas and email me. I'll reach out to you and remind you, and then I'll get together, Ken, with you. Maybe we can set up a program. Okay, we'll have to come up with a date.
Heidi, yeah, excuse me. I was wondering if we could, if in planning the date, specifics of the date could be set soon. Because a lot of people are trying to plan summer travel. I'm getting a lot of questions in my office. So it would be helpful to know when I know I need to be around.
Yeah, in the past, we had it like in July sometime. So I don't know if that works, but you could look at your schedules and come up with one. I just assumed said it.
Do a doodle poll?
What?
A doodle poll?
If somebody
learned how to do that.
Or
Yeah, just,
I don't,
we just,
not in my wheelhouse.
just,
Ken can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, we gotta see what Alex's schedule is first.
Okay, and so I will be reaching out for ideas for sessions, and that is all that I had. Taba's not here, so we'll skip that. Any old business? Any new business? Yes, there is. Our body is called the College Council. It's been called the College Council. We refer to it as the College Council. Apparently, in all of the, stuff that comes from SUNY, we're just the council. There's really no designation, college, university. And I guess the consideration before you is, now that we are state university at Plattsburgh, do we want to all of a sudden change our name to the University Council?
Wasn't the situation, Ken, I'm sorry, I don't have it open now, I should
Yeah,
close
so
my
just-
phone. A
yeah.
bunch of universities have done that,
All
correct?
right, I'm gonna formally put the motion on the table so that we can have a conversation based on it.
Go ahead.
So I'm motioning that we go to university if it's within.
I second that.
Can I make a comment? Ann talked to this when she was here earlier, and I thought she made it clear that there's a number of issues that have to be resolved before the college is ready to become a university, let alone us deciding to change our name.
No, that was just the development, the legality pertaining to the
Foundation.
foundation. Yeah,
So it's two
Yeah.
separate, and so the
we're already university.
Plattsburgh College Foundation, based on their fiduciary, and then what the attorneys looked at, they don't need to change it. They can stay PCF. So they're a separate distinct body, but the College Council is only referred to as the council. So Ken, it'd be so.
Yeah, so I mean, in this state law, it's each institution needs to have a council. And so the law refers to council. In practical sense, all of our comprehensive peers have called them college councils. And that's what this institution, this group has been historically. There are 4 university centers, which used to be the only universities in the SUNY system. They all call themselves either university councils or the state university council. They call themselves university council. So the open question, which I raised with Heidi, was that you are the college council. That's how you refer to. We have achieved university status as SUNY Plattsburgh. And so if you wanted to make yourselves the university council to be consistent with some of the university centers, it's up to you to do that. Check with SUNY on that. It's basically up to you to decide what you want to call yourselves in a sense. Because college council essentially is data, if that makes sense. Is that the context you?
Yeah, and my recommendation, thank you for that, Ken, and is that I think that as ambassadors or what have you, as members of this, is that we need to continue to embody and show people in the community that we have taken on a new status of university, and this is a good way for us to introduce that into our communities and the people that we work with. So it just reflects the college has now transitioned from college to university. So, but I get where you were going, Marty. If the Plattsburgh College Foundation is a separate, 501(c), nonprofit organ, that's the only reason. Other than that, I think Ann would have said, let's make the jump too. But I think it's a simple change, and I think it's one that should be celebrated on your status that you folks achieve.
So just, and Ken, when you confer with SUNY, this is a decision that the college council members can make on their own. And it's your choice. So technically they can do a vote today, or is there anything we have to do with this?
That's why it's on the agenda.
Yeah, okay, just want to be clear.
Because anytime it's referred to in the state statute, it's the council, because that's required. We've probably written a long time ago, but certainly with some institutions within the system, in university, some being college, some being community college, have their own boards that are more separate in terms of how they're put together. But it's a right question.
Any other thoughts on that?
Sure.
I mean, my response to Ken was, I just didn't see really the real need for it to go through that, but it seems like there's some strong feelings around the
We're a
table.
university now, then we should
change
we're a
that.
university now. Joe, when you scream.
Is the institution referring to itself as the university?
Yes, yes. So whenever I give comments now, I talk about our wonderful university.
Okay.
This university is doing this. Yes.
And just for further context in that regard, there are times where college council is referred to in some correspondence, in this article or something like that. And if it's referred to as university council, it's the college council that could do the aspect of reinforcing that. So there's that aspect.
Agree with you.
Yeah, even at graduation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You know, the college council bestows this award. Though we're a university, like it just, language is important. It's a simple one and easy one.
Right, and it's consistent.
Exactly.
We're all on the same
Consistency
page.
is, yeah.
Can you imagine any instances where in Ann Hanson's office, they use the phrase college council?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that, sometimes the invitations go, you know, the president and the chair of the college.
I meant more in terms of her fundraising documents.
Well, she was talking about people's wills and that they had put in there. I don't know the college at Plattsburgh State, but she said she was letting everyone know that's not going to make a difference.
I don't think that the council is referred to in it.
Yeah.
Can't imagine where it would be, so I don't think that would be an issue. Any other thoughts, Jim, Anna?
I would support it.
Okay.
Makes
Now-
sense. That's the university centers all do it. I think we
Okay, I'll take a motion then from the floor to rename Michael. Second,
Yes.
Sid, all in favor?
I
All right, so we now will refer to ourselves as the university.
Can I go back to old business for a second?
I'm sorry, that gas, no go.
Well, we started talking about the name and that reminded me that we did leave somewhere with there was a naming of either the SBE or the Sable Hall, and I was kind of confused with
Yes.
this whole situation.
And I had a conversation with Ann about that recently and with Ken and I sent out the guidelines for naming and the amounts of money that need to be raised. And there are things in the pipeline for, you know,
Well, that's when I had emailed you and said, I was
Right.
confused with that. We weren't doing Sable. We were trying to just name the School of Business and Economics.
I think what Ann explained to me is they sort of go hand in hand.
Oh, Sable. So it has to stay Sable to match the SB.
It would probably, I think, am I right on this? And I might have misunderstood her, that the building would be named the blah, 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 blah.
there's two naming options, one for the building and one potentially. the
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this already has a name. I thought the conversation was that the SB
Well-
doesn't have a name.
Well, it could be renamed. This
Gotta-
building could be
yeah, gotta-
renamed.
Change.
I think that.
If you got 100,000, if you got 100,000, they'll,
No, it's
oh no, more than that.
5 million.
Oh, 5 million.
This is not a trivial amount of money we're talking.
Right, and so that's why I was like, I thought we were leaving this name alone. But we were talking about actually naming the School of Business and Economics program. Like other schools have, like, what does Rochester have?
Simon School of Business.
Right.
That's where my daughter works. I know that.
So then I asked, I mean, is there any, there's nothing else on this campus that is the school of, the so-and-so school of something. It's buildings are named after.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, that's
or
You know,
named.
one thing we haven't considered is we can find somebody whose last name was Sable. And
That's been a joke around here forever.
So Sable is a place we're from the building with the knowledge that it's the only real estate location that we don't have
Let's say.
a sort of
As in
a
the-
legacy in terms of naming. There's a couple of residence halls that folks are ambivalent about that could take on names, but I think if you're a donor, you probably want your name on Sable rather than a residence hall. I can't-
Right.
So if it was this would be Google Hall. And it would,
Go ahead.
I'm just, this is just, and then it would be the Google School of Business.
Okay, so they would go together is what you're saying. All right, so we leave Sable Hall alone and then leave
No, we'd have Google on the front.
Business and Economics, leave it alone too.
No, it would be, so it'd be, for
Consistent.
example, it would be the Google School of Economics, so Business and Economics, but then you would walk into Google Hall to find the faculty and students.
Oh, I get what you're saying, but so if you're not changing one, don't change either. Gotcha.
Well, the goal is to change both.
Yeah, it's $10 million
Right, you want this
and it's
Yeah,
in the
gotcha.
report.
Intertwined.
They're gonna put you in charge of that committee.
So yeah, that's the goal. It's very, that for me is a major goal. And, you know, the good news is that we have capacity, and I don't want to speak for Ann, but there is capacity. It's just a matter of
Money. Oh,
Yeah.
cultivation. I mean, the money's there.
getting over that.
You need motions for the dates next year.
Yes.
To keep us on track and target, I'm gonna motion that we accept the dates as proposed, for 20.
Oh, they're working.
Hold on a second. We're going to move on to the next bit of new business, which is meeting dates. And I will take a motion to accept, and Michael's made it. These meeting dates, they're all Mondays. You'll notice that the April 15th one is at the Queensbury campus. We haven't been down at the Queensbury campus in a long time. I think it's time for a field trip. Plus it's closer to my house.
Oh, sure.
But, you know, we went, it was
Depending on weather.
years ago, we went down, and I think it's important, you know,
We did, I agree.
we do represent them as well. And
I absolutely agree.
Tax day, you might want to get out of town.
yeah, that's
Yeah, I would have picked winter though.
right. Back at
You
you.
know,
Yes.
All right, so Michael made a motion,
Together,
second.
takes-
Jim, all in favor?
I
Okay, so those, and we will be in touch very shortly about a retreat date. And anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
It's second, Jim. Favor.
we're done.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Um,